Welcome, friends, to the Play Guitar Podcast. I'm Lee, and I'm here to help you become the guitar player that you always wanted to be. We're talking about how to play more than your basic blues solo. Do you struggle with blues solos? Do they sound like you're missing something? Do they sound a little too basic, maybe? Do they sound like they could use some new ideas? Well, there's nothing wrong with a basic blues solo. If you play it smartly, if you can use very easy things to get some really good ideas across. But there are some small things that you can do to make your solos as effective as possible. And they can sound awesome. This week's video, which you can click the link in the description. This is not the lesson video. This is the teaching. We're going to dive deep into each of some secrets that I'm giving you today. This video is called the 5 Beginner Blues Guitar Soloing Secrets that you can use today. I wanted to have something that a beginner or an intermediate player could do some really easy basic things and start to get some sounds that they've never been able to create before. So in it, I made a solo that's over a 12-bar blues and has 5 licks. Each one of those licks uses one of these secrets, and it's going to make your soloing sound fantastic. And the best part is that none of these things are hard to do, but they're all over 12-bar blues, so you can string them one after another and make a whole solo out of it there too, with all of these sounds. They're not hard. They're just like everything else with the guitar. It seems very difficult at first till you've got it on your fingers. But then you think, well, I've been doing this for years and it's just a day, right? The problem with all this stuff is none of it's obvious. You don't think to do any of these things, but you put them all together and you really got something there. So how do beginners and how do intermediates incorporate these secrets? What are the secrets? The secrets are phrasing, mixing scales, targeting, double stops, blues scales. And how do you make these things make sense and how do you make them easy to perform? That's what I'm going to be hanging out with talking to you today about. And I actually recorded this whole podcast earlier. It didn't record. I thought I pressed the record button and I looked over at the end and it wasn't recording. So I'm going to take a second to check. Yes, we are recording. So let's move forward. Okay. Phrasing is the first one. Do you think about phrasing when you're playing? Do you think about communicating to someone who's listening to you? Is what you're playing communicating what you want to get across? Or are you just hoping for the best? Or are you just really just going up and down your scales? Well, if you want to communicate, right, what do you need to communicate? Well, you need some information to come across and you need to have a way of saying that it's over and we have another thing to communicate. A sentence doesn't have to be complicated to be effective. We learn very basic sentences that get to the point when we first learn to read and write. I'm going to the store. We're going to go to the store. Little words that are very descriptive and informative, right? We don't have words here. We have feelings and emotions. We have melodies that we want to get across. We have things to share. And the problem is, as we share those things, people will tune out over time unless it's shared in a way that they can digest. So if you're playing 10 million notes, that's difficult for someone to wrap their head around sometimes. Sometimes 2 or 3 notes can really say everything that needs to be said. So how do you do that? How do you make a small phrase? Well, how we do that is we have to have some sort of punctuation. We have to have something at the end of the phrase that says, this is over, and now I'm ready to say something else. And so I did a little lick, something similar to that. But at the end of the first lick, I hit a root note. I actually hit 2 of them, an octave there, right? That said, that was something. I said something and now it's over. What's next? Makes you ready for the next thing to come across there. But I hit the root note there. And so each one of these little secrets that I'm sharing to move your blues playing up to the next level, I'm going to have an easy start. An easy start is something little that you can do, 1 note or 2 notes that you can get the sound of these secrets in your regular playing. And this one is to do just that. Play the root at the end, play maybe 4 or 5 notes, and then play the root and stop and listen. And you might find something. You might find, oh my gosh, now I'm ready to come up with another idea. Make sure it's short. Play a little something else and hit the root again. If you're an A, hit the A. Next time I do this, I might do it a little bit differently. Play it again. Play the A. You're going to start to see something. These little ideas are going to become very powerful when you hit the root. What happens if you don't hit the root? That's not the root. That's a D. Finally got to the root on that, right? Every time I hit that D and you thought that was it, that was ending, it felt like everything was up in the air. It was not finished. It felt like a question. And as I kept playing the D, it's like question after question after question after question. People will tune out from that. People will not pay attention to a million questions. At some point, we need an answer, right? So playing that root. So that's an easy start. Play a little bit. Hit the root. The next secret that I shared today was mixing scales. Ooh, that sounds difficult. Right. And why would you ever mix a scale? We learn a chord progression and we try to find the one scale that works over it. Well, when you play blues, we typically use the dominant 7th chord. Dominant 7th chord is a major triad with a flat 7. Hear that. Has a rub in there. That flat 7 makes that chord not feel stable. It wants to go somewhere. It wants to resolve forward. It's always moving forward. Maybe one reason why people love the blues, because it always feels like it's going forward all the time, right? But there's another really cool thing about this dominant 7th chord is it's forgiving. You can play a lot of different sounds over top of it and it will work just fine. The most basic, the most inside sound that you would play over dominant 7th chord is the Mixolydian mode. That's a major scale. But when you get to 7th, you play that flat 7 from the chord. You don't play the major 7. You play the flat 7. Now that sounds a little inside. We're used to playing the minor pentatonic over dominant 7th chord. And this has a rub to it because the minor pentatonic has a minor 3rd and the chord has a major 3rd. So you got a C and a C sharp at the same time. And that's a pretty tense sound, right? But in the context of blues, we like a little tension. A little tension sounds good to us. It makes us want to move forward. It makes it want to sound good. We also have the major pentatonic over the blues, over the dominant 7. That's a very happy sound. We can choose these different scales depending on what we want to get across. Then we have the blues scales, the major blues scale, the minor blues scale. Those are pentatonic scales with an added note in there to make them more tense. You can also play the diminished scale. Also, the whole tone scale will work over dominant. So they all sound great in their own way. But the key to all this is tension and release. You play that minor pentatonic scale over a dominant chord, you've got built-in tension right there because of the thirds. But what are we going to do here? What are we going to do to get an easy start mixing scales? Well, when you go to mix scales, you think, gosh, do I have to superimpose scale patterns? Do we have to say, oh, well, you know what? I'm going to play the A major pentatonic and then the A minor pentatonic in the same place. That takes a while to be able to do and wrap your head around. But what we can do is take the good stuff out of that. What's the difference between the two? Well, the biggest difference is the third, right? So if you're playing a blues and say you're an A, and you play the minor third, this would be a C, and then you resolve it a half step up to the major third. That's getting the good stuff from a minor pentatonic sound and a major pentatonic sound. So just by doing those two notes, taking a minute, figuring out, okay, what key am I in? What's on this main chord, the A7 chord, what is the minor third and what's the major third? And just doing those two notes, you're getting the bulk of what the change is when you go from a minor scale to a major scale over top of one chord. You'll be getting some of that sound by just doing two notes. It's an awesome, easy start. The third secret I talked about in the video is targeting. Try doing a little targeting. Well, targeting is exactly what it sounds like. You're aiming for something. Did you ever listen to someone playing guitar and you just say, get to the point? Doesn't feel like they're getting to the point. They're just kind of searching for things and looking around. Well, how do you get to the point when you don't have words, right? But what do we have? We have tension. We have release. We have strong notes and we have weak notes. And these are the things that we can use to get our different emotions across and the different feelings that we want to convey, right? So as we target, we can move in a direction. We'll have direction, and that's important. So what would you do? What is an easy start? What's an easy way to start doing some targeting? Well, do you know the chords in your chord progression? We've been doing blues today, and our big first change is going from A dominant 7 to D dominant 7, right? So just like in rhythm guitar, if you're playing bar chords, you got to know where the A is to play the A. You got to know the D is to play the D. Find out where that D note is and say you're an A. There comes the D. That's where the D chord came in right there when I hit this D note. I set myself up so that when the D chord came in, I played a D note right on one, right when it happened. Pretty easy. Not much different than being a rhythm guitar player. Oh, the D chord's coming up. I got to find it. Well, it's up at the 10th fret. Played it right on one. Well, you could do that. It's just thinking this way across the strings instead of up and down the strings. So your easy start for this one is to aim for a chord tone. Doesn't have to be the D. It could be any of the notes in the chords. But work your way towards them. That's an easy start to do that. So my fourth lick and my fourth secret for moving your blues soloing from just plain old vanilla up to the next level, this is trying some double stops. What's a double stop? We all know double stops. Double stops have those that really. Double stops are two notes that we get from chords. We're going to have to pick some notes, from a chord and play them either together or kind of offset as you do sometimes. But what's neat about double stops is they can move around a lot more than just a block chord can happen. It's a really, let's see, Soul Man. There's a ton of different songs that double stops are the lick, are the main riff of the chord. I find that double stops are where chords and scales meet. They move like scales, but they have harmony like chords. So let's get started with that. Let's get an easy start for double stops. And it is that easy. There's not a whole lot I have to go into it. We're finding a chord. Let's do our A chord here. And we're going to pick two notes from it. Now, the common one is your high E string and then your G string. Those are the two notes right from my bar chord. That's the note that I'm pressing down with my second finger on the G string and then my first finger on the high E string. Now I'm picking that. I'm using my pick for the lower note, and then I'm using my middle finger on my picking hand to pluck the higher note. So I can do it offset or I can play them together without worrying about strumming and hitting a bunch of other strings that I wanted to, that I could do. I could find other chord notes in different areas. This is from kind of a D shape. And one of the things that I did in the lick this week is I added a little tension by chromatically moving a double stop down until I got to two other chord notes from the same chord. So I added a little tension while just one chord is going on. It's a really neat sound. It is as simple as taking two notes from a chord that's matching the song that you're playing and getting to slide it around. That has to do a little bit with scales, knowing your scales, knowing the other notes in the family of chords that you're playing. But to get started, E string and the G string of a bar chord, play them together, and you're going to be off to the races using double stops. The last lick and the last secret that I went into today was blues scales. So what's a blues? We talked about that a little bit earlier. Blues scales. Blues scales, we have a minor blues and a major blues scales. These scales that's major and that's minor. Right there. They have a lot more tension in them than a regular old pentatonic scale. And all it is one note difference. We've added, in the case of the minor blues, we've added the sharp 4, the flat 5 into that. And in the case of the major blues scale, we're adding the minor third in there. So it's root, the second degree of the scale, minor third, and then major third. So 2, minor third, major third. To me, it has a little Southern rock Charlie Daniels type sound. Adding these scales into your playing is very easy, especially if you're really, really, really good with your pentatonic scales. You just have to add one note into it. So if I'm playing in the key of A, I've got 1, 4, 1, 2, 3 on the A string. So 1, 4 on low E, 1, 2, 3 on the A, 1, 3 on the D, 1, 3, 4 on the G string, 1, 4, 1. And you can go up to the high 4 and back to the 1. A lot of songs use these. Oh Well by Fleetwood Mac is one of the ones that it's right in the riff there. You'll hear it in tons of different songs. The major blues is in chicken picking guitar, bluegrass, southern rock, country. It's all over the place. But just adding that extra note in there is going to add a little tension that really sounds nice resolving. Even if you just run through it, just bum, 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 it adds a little extra in there, makes just playing the scale sound pretty musical there. So just find your minor pentatonic scale, and then on the A string, add a note in the middle. And on the G string, add your pinky one higher than the forward note in pattern 1. You're going to be playing that and adding those notes and sounds into your solos. My call to action each week, I have, it might be a free guide. It could be a whole bunch of different things. This week, it's a course. I have a course called Solos That Make Sense, and it matches what we're working with this week perfectly. If you need help targeting, working on blues scales, mixing scales, working on phrasing, that's all baked into this course. There's a lot of, I have student Stevens going through it right now, who's loving it. And there you go, Stevens. Good. Little shout out to Steven for the Solos That Make Sense. It's a great course. And if you're struggling, it really takes you by the hand and gives you a lot of stuff to practice as well, too. So you can get that over at playguitaracademy.com. /solos that make sense, or just click the link in the description. Okay. All right. This was a lot of fun. This is the second time I went through this today, but the second time's a charm, right? That's a wrap. Thanks for joining me today for the Play Guitar Podcast, and make sure to hit the button below to subscribe to the show. And if you have benefited from this podcast, please leave a favorable iTunes, Apple Podcast review. It's the best way to make sure we get this very valuable content to more guitar players around the world. And head on over to Play Guitar Academy. I'm going to be moving the Q&A back to Wednesdays at 5 o'clock Eastern time and PM Eastern time. And that's when we have our Q&A. But I'm also been each week going through all of this content that I've been putting out, I've been doing a group class there at 5 o'clock in the main meeting room there. So I'd love to see you over there. You can try the Academy out for just $1 for 2 weeks and come over, say hi to me in the Q&A. And I'd love to see you over there. Okay. Thanks everybody. I'll see you in the next podcast. Bye-bye.